All right, welcome back, Hoosier fans, to another episode of the Rock Report. I'm your host, Sean Ratcher, here with Ricky Tamus, and today we're talking about the UCLA win last night. Kurt Cignetti squad now going to 3-0, and this game was just absolutely dominant. I really thought Indiana established themselves the way they should going into Big Ten play. Countless names across the board that we're going to talk about being winners for the night. But really, other than maybe a couple penalties and one drive on defense, there wasn't much that you look at that game and say, we're going to struggle or, we've got a lot to work on. I think this team is, going to peak at the right time. I think the way they're gelling and the way they're coming together is really going to peak well about week 6, week 7 when we need to.
Yeah, and it's really kind of comforting to see an Indiana football team go on the road, have that scripted first drive, kind of get in those third and longs, and come out with a touchdown in that first drive. Obviously, UCLA's first drive didn't go as planned. We went up big 14-0 really quickly off the bat. And that is just amazing way to respond on the road. Get up 14-0, get the fans in it. Just really great football right off the bat. No lost steps, especially being that away game with that long flight and time change there.
Yeah, going into our first segment, winners and losers. First winner right off the bat, Curtis Rourke. I mean, incredible performance. I think week one, there's a lot of question on the arm talent there. If you weren't an Ohio Bobcats football fan, you probably did not see much out of him that promised you or, promised the way this program was going to continue. But I think the way Shanahan's really opened up the playbook, going into these, next few weeks, going into Big Ten play, I think has really shown that Curtis Rourke's got a great arm. He doesn't make dumb throws. And I feel like he's got a good internal clock. Like he stays in the pocket as long as he's supposed to, throws the ball away when he's supposed to, and doesn't force anything. And I really think it's what IU's needed for a while. I think since Mike Penix, we've struggled to find a guy that doesn't make dumb throws. And I think Curtis Rourke's really going to do this program well going forward.
I mean, he's a game manager. One thing that really stood out to me, especially with his pocket presence, um, it's really easy for a quarterback to kind of run into sacks, make that offensive line look a little weak. But his presence in the pocket really stood out to me. And quite frankly, it just makes everyone look better. Um, he can key those free rushers, kind of evade the pocket, kind of stay poised, uh, not running out. It's just very impressive to see that pocket presence he had.
Yeah.
But our
So
next winner of this game was Justice Ellison.
yeah, Justice is one of those guys that I really kind of had questions, not of the talent in the running back room before, but really just who's going to pop off, who's going to be the star. And I think Justice Allison's really established himself a lot. And, not to put down the other guys in that room, I think it's a very talented room, but I think just the way he's kind of established our run game early on in the season, I think we'll see a lot of defenses kind of move their front to account for that. And I really think it's going to open up the pass game a little bit more for Curtis going forward into Big Ten play.
Yeah, it's really kind of comforting to see these fresh legs. We had four running backs who are really getting some meaningful time. Elijah Green, Kalen Black, Tyson Lottie, and Justice Ellison. But it's nice. They all run hard. They're all physical backs. It's pretty impressive to see that backfield kind of work together. It's great football there.
Yeah, going into our next winter, the uniform combos. Really, beginning of the year, I was not very impressed. These Indiana uniforms, thought they were plain, but I'm starting to like. It starting to grow on me. It really reminds me of the pre-Mallory era uniforms that we've worn the past couple years, and I think the way it looked on TV was pretty cool with the UCLA uniforms. And big shout out to Money Mitch Gudmundsson with the going back to the blue gloves to match UCLA jerseys. It really negates a lot of the defensive holding calls, and this is something he implemented a few years back, and I really think it's grown to help the Hoosiers and really gives DBs an advantage in these games.
Yeah, and we saw that in the past when we played Michigan State. Everyone had those green gloves. Really cool to see. But the green grass there with the two color contrast on the jerseys and the overall uniform combos just was very visually appealing to watch on TV. But let's talk about kind of the Hoosier Nation, the fans in LA. That was a big winner of the weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting. I think this has been a fan base that really just waiting for a team to do well since the 2020 season when they couldn't be there, and then the year after it just kind of all went downhill. So I think a good Indiana team is one good for the school, but one for the fan base. I really think when you're an established basketball school, growing your fan base in football is not always easy, but seeing as many Hoosier fans as we saw in Pasadena this weekend was really promising for this program going forward. I hope going into next week, going into Big Ten play, that kind of carries itself into Bloomington. And the reality of it is, this is a good football team. If you live in the Indianapolis, Bloomington area, there's no reason not to go out to a couple games. I'm not saying you have to be there every week. I know it costs a lot of money to go to a game, but hell, I'd much rather be at an Indiana Hoosiers game than, you know, go watch any other team in the state.
Definitely. I mean, Indiana University does have one of the largest alumni fan bases in the country. Um, it's just really cool, obviously, playing in LA. Next year, I do believe they have a trip over to USC. Just kind of, it makes it kind of a destination for fans to go. It's like a pre-bowl game destination. Pretty awesome to see. A little different for the fans. Get out to LA. Pretty cool. But the last and final winner of this weekend is the Rose Bowl. Just an amazing historic stadium.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed this week was it's a historic place, right? And Indiana basketball is known for having a historic stadium, a place people want to travel, a bucket list item, right? This is one of those stadiums that's a bucket list item for football fans. And I really think it showed in just the amount of people that showed up and the amount of people that did all the extracurriculars. I saw plenty of videos of people doing stadium tours, people at the Hoosier alumni and Hoosier fan tailgates. It's just cool to see when fans gravitate to something like the Rose Bowl, and for Indiana to go into a game like this and come out on top, it's good to see. I mean, we've been playing in some historic stadiums in Big Ten play for years, and it's pretty rare that you travel to a Penn State or an Ohio State or a Michigan and see, a big set of Indiana fans there. This is really hopefully starting a new tradition of fans traveling well, and traveling well as a lot of these other Big Ten teams do.
Definitely. And obviously, the biggest winner is the Indiana Hoosiers coming out of that game 42-13. But let's go on to the losers of the weekend. Started off with 56, big 5'6" in that middle with that face mask. Quarterback face mask. Nah, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that is supposed to be a tough individual, a leader of men, a captain of this football team. And coming out with that soft of a face mask is just disappointing. He used to have, pretty mean looking face mask, but apparently it's hindering his vision. So now he looks like the overweight kid that you put at quarterback in third grade because he was the only one talented enough to throw the ball. So hopefully moving forward, he can talk to Mitch Gudmundsson and get something changed there before he loses this entire fan base.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with him after that first game, and he did say it helps his vision. I don't really agree with that. So much he has to look for in that kind of 5 yard box. But it's kind of a bummer. I want to see kind of if he's going to do something that he needs vision, he should throw middle bar on there, something just kind of intimidating. They like to post them on the game day graphic, and you see offensive lineman in that face mask. Not the best. But the next loser of the weekend is Deshaun Foster at UCLA Bruins.
Yeah, honestly, tough spot for that program. Having Chip Kelly just up and bounce to go to a conference opponent and be the OCs. One, just a wild move, but two, you got a guy that's a storied alumnus at this university come in as your head coach, go into his Big Ten presser and just absolutely embarrass himself, and then come out in his first Big Ten game and not even compete. Absolute loser of the week. Really hope the guy can turn it around and keep his job the next couple years.
Yeah, I wish him the best of luck there. But the next loser, Air Jordan. I know there's a few college football teams who've kind of erred on the side of having Air Jordan as their sponsor for uniforms. They do make some cool player edition cleats and shoes, but that is about it, I would say.
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons we wanted to list this in our losers group was because Indiana had a opportunity to sign a huge sponsorship deal going into this season, and whatever happened, Adidas obviously came out on top, so their offer was better. Air Jordan decided that sponsoring the UCLA football program was a better idea, and here we are with the results. Indiana fans still aren't, getting much Adidas gear. Not really great pickings, but glad the jump man's over there at UCLA are getting beat 42-14.
Definitely, definitely. Um, I mean, NIU awoke a beast in Notre Dame. One of the pretty big losers of the weekend was Purdue. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I don't care what anyone says. I love Marcus Freeman. I think the guy knows how to coach ball. Um, teams get beat occasionally, and a lot of times, early on in the season, there's going to be one of those games that you get upset, and they got upset and turned the thing around immediately. We talked on Thursday actually about how promising it looked for Hudson Card and the Purdue offense. Well, that fell apart very quickly, and now going into Week 12, if IU doesn't win the bucket, I'll be very surprised because that Purdue team just absolutely embarrassed themselves.
Yep. Wishing Josh Sales and DeMarze Lewis on Purdue some luck in the season, but obviously not too much luck. Let's go over to one of the big losers. A rule I hate, a rule everyone hates, kind of talked a lot. That targeting rule. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I understand the premise, right? Trying to protect players, but there's a couple calls in that game that they're football plays. You know what I mean? Like if somebody fumbles the ball and while a player has already launched himself, you reach down and duck your head. To me, that's not targeting. In my understanding of what this rule used to be, there was an intention factor to it. But now it's turned into just about anything's a targeting call. And going off of that, the roughing the passer call on Linnell Carr was absurd. I mean, it was a
Just bad
textbook
call.
sack. He ran through his chest. It very, very textbook plays that I just think it's hard to avoid, especially in game situations. And at the same time, what's the alternative? You want guys to start taking out knees? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got 320, 330-pound defensive linemen. You really want them hitting your quarterback below the belt? Probably not.
No, but it's one of those things that rule was made for kind of a situation with a real defensive player not to get in the head. And we saw Aiden Fisher he got cracked back by a UCLA player straight in the head. And that is kind of textbook why the rule was made, to kind of one of those blindside blocks, trying to get it away from the head. And they didn't call target on that. So they need to have a big discussion wherever they hold these discussions, but it needs to get changed because it is one of those things where we saw CJ West, simply both players were diving for a ball on the ground. That is a
Yeah,
loose
not
ball.
much he
Yeah,
could do
yeah.
there. But
Not much you can do. So it's kind of, they got to get that one fixed.
yeah, I really don't understand what direction do you go from here? I mean, you're just tightening and tightening what's a good hit, and going forward, they've got to find a way to make this work. So going into our last segment here before our two special guests come on, just away games. This is one of those things that a lot of people don't see really what goes on with just the amount of planning that goes into away games, the amount of things that are researched scientifically just so that players are at peak performance. And this is the biggest test the Hoosiers had the entire year, flying across the country, um, you know, late flight, getting home today at 7 a.m. Away games are tough, and the Hoosiers really put together a good plan. And it was interesting to read. I want to say Hoosier Huddle might have had the article about how Kurt Signetti is under the impression of we're going to do everything we can at home, fly out late, so we're just kind of rolling into our routine, and clearly it works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those things that it's going to happen now with this Big Ten schedule. Thankfully, this year we only have one trip out to the West Coast, but you got to think about USC and UCLA. They're going to be making this trip to the East Coast, a lot more to the Midwest. You got to think about those other programs, volleyball, basketball, who are going to be playing 2 games a week, and they're going to be traveling kind of across the country. How's it factor into that, to those sports? But I do think obviously the Hoosiers kind of planned it very well. I don't think there was much kind of a loss in step. They obviously came out super strong in that game. It's interesting to see how it affects kind of the early week practice coming up with Charlotte.
Yeah, I think especially that quick turnover after a game like that is interesting. But I'll really be surprised to see going forward, how does the Big Ten maintain this? On a football, basketball level, it makes sense to me. I think the funding's there, not that crazy. But when you look at some of these non-revenue sports, and you're flying across the country to go to Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC, the budget just has to go up an exorbitant amount. And at some point, I feel like we might have to go back to the East and West schedule, but outside of football. How much sense does it make to fly your softball team, out to the West Coast 3, 4, 5 times a year?
Yeah, maybe we'll see some like invitational tournaments like where you'll have just a bunch of like those West Coast teams and a few Big Ten teams, and they'll just have like let's say like 5 volleyball games, 10 different teams there. But who knows? But we have our two special guests, two specialists, um, fan favorites, James Evan and Nico Radicic in the waiting room. So let's hand it over to them. So we got the specialists here today. Our special guest, as we mentioned earlier in the week, we have James Evans, punter for the Indiana Hoosiers, and Nico Radicic, our kicker for the Indiana Hoosiers. So, yeah, welcome to the pod. Happy to have both of you guys on. We're going to ask you a few questions, but Nico, I want to start off with you. You're coming off a few injuries. What really has gone into you, kind of your preparation over the off season, preseason, fall camp to really earn the starting job?
Yeah, it was a tough surgery. Just using the muscle that you're using over and over again. So just rehab every day. Going through the rehab room a couple times a day. Actually, I was in there probably for about 3 hours, I would say, every day through fall camp, trying to get my leg ready and then warm before practice, and then just stay focused. I knew that my leg wasn't going to be as strong enough as it was prior to the injury. So just stay focused to make the field goals, the close ones inside of 40. That's about it. Just stay ready inside of 40.
Yeah, I feel like, we all know you as kind of the accuracy guy, which always kind of played into this, process of you earning the starting role. Kind of going off that, having an injury the first couple of years, like what was your mentality really like? Because I know the whole training room thing every day is not fun by any means, and you push through 2 tough years of it to now being the starter.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to learn to love it. At first, you try to avoid the training room, not go, still kick every day, and then you realize it doesn't work. You got to go needle every day as much as you can. You got to go do the cupping. You got to do the stuff you don't want to do to try to be successful and help the team out.
Awesome. All
Definitely,
right,
definitely.
going forward here, Jimmy, let's talk about your journey from not playing football to now potential NFL career. Kind of start at the beginning of playing other sports growing up and kind of take us through your path.
All right. So I primarily played rugby growing up. Also a little bit of cricket, a little bit of squash. And then I guess as high school kind of went on and started getting, a few too many injuries playing rugby, I looked for a different path. And I was watching college football on like a Sunday Avo in New Zealand, the time differences, and I saw a bunch of Australian guys. So I kind of did a little bit of research and realized it could be an opportunity for me. And then so yeah, I reached out to the coaches at Pro Kick Australia in must have been like May of 2019. Flew over to Melbourne for a tryout, went well, and then moved there. Started 2020, and then I think must have been like 6 to 8 weeks later, they asked if I wanted to go play at IU, and then a month later, I was pretty much committed. So it all kind of happened pretty quickly, but yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about Pro Kick Australia. I know coming from New Zealand, like how did you find out about them? Did they find you? Um,
Um,
how's that kind of recruiting process differed?
yeah,
Obviously not playing high school football in the States.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, really, I just saw kids from Australia playing like college ball, and so I kind of figured, there must be some kind of connection getting them there. And then I actually reached out to them, and as far I guess as the recruiting process, they kind of handled everything. I mean, they asked if I wanted to go to IU, but it was a pretty easy decision, yes. And then they kind of handled it. And I guess within a month, I was on the phone with Coach Allen and they offered me a scholarship, and that was that kind of thing. So, yeah, pretty simple.
Awesome. All right, kind of continuing to go off that. So now you've been at IU for a pretty great and lengthy career. I know you're up there with just about every punting record the school has. So kind of looking forward to next year, obviously, with your eyes, set on the NFL. What does that process look like for you? And, how do those coaches that you kind of leaned into to get into your career, how do they play into continuing?
Yeah. So I still speak to them. Even yesterday I was texting one of them about the game. I guess as far as getting there, having a good year this year, putting things on film I want to put on film, and then I guess, the pre-draft process next year, showcasing, what I can do. So yeah.
All right. Going back to you, Nico. Kind of take us in your mind a little bit. How does pressure play into your role as a kicker, especially in the Big Ten? And what do you do to handle
Yeah, well, I played in Texas where, as a high school player, you have 15,000 people at a high school game on a given day. So I've learned to just cancel out the noise. For me, I see myself blacking out at every kick. I just remember coming back to the sideline, no matter if it's like an extra point or a field goal. So I don't really remember what happens on the field. I just know like when Jimmy's hand goes up, I have to leave my feet, and muscle memory just takes over from then on.
Awesome. All right, back to you, Jimmy. Coming from a foreign country, kind of what has been your impression of Big Ten football, and how does it compare to sports where you grew up?
I think I guess this the general culture, the like tailgating, the band, the cheerleaders is all kind of crazy. I guess we really don't have anything comparable to that in New Zealand. When my mother and my sister came out last season, they were kind of blown away um, by everything, like I guess like the pageantry of college football. So yeah, everything was very new to me, I guess, but it's pretty cool on Saturdays when the environment you're playing in is pretty sick. So yeah.
So yeah, kind of what's the
Yeah.
closest thing you would have either I guess New Zealand, but also Australia is pretty close. And I know you spent some time there when you were with the pro kick. So kind of what's the nearest thing to either professional sports at this kind of level, or is there a college level of something that compares?
There's not really collegiate sports really. Most sports like rugby, soccer, like most kids, like if you're identified in like high school, you'll kind of get signed at like an academy and kind of go from there. So I guess like the professional games of those would be the most comparable, but like the atmosphere is like nowhere close to kind of what college football is. I think you'd have to go to like English, like Premier League soccer to kind of get like a similar level of atmosphere. But
All right, we've got two more questions for both of you guys here. You can kind of bounce back and forth, answer them, however you see fit. But first one, talk to us a bit about the transition to new coaching staff, and then once we go through that, kind of take us through day to day life under Kurt Signetti and how that kind of differs from the past.
Go ahead, Jim.
sorry, what was the first question again? I guess it's
Just
transition.
coaching staff transition.
Um, I guess for me it wasn't like too dissimilar. Like the two coaches I mean, I guess we spend the most time with Coach Kane, the special teams coordinator, and Coach Owings and his staff, the strength coaches. So I guess maybe there was like a minor transition at the start of the year as far as like getting to know those guys and like getting to understand how they do things. But I mean, it wasn't necessarily a huge transition on like the people we spend the most time around, like on a day-to-day basis. So
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Coach Kane and Coach T also had a lot of similarities when it came to special teams. So I think that transition was pretty smooth when it came down to the specialist.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
going
guess
off that,
there's
take us through the day-to-days a little bit.
I guess the biggest thing is we transitioned from a morning practice team to a afternoon practice team. So like the days right now are kind of long as far as like I have an 8 a.m. 2 days a week. My Tuesdays, Thursdays, I have class from 9:10 to 2:40. And then I like as soon as I leave class, like I catch like the end of the special teams meeting straight into practice. So I'm really like doing stuff from 8 till 6. Uh, but I guess that's the biggest difference for me.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. You got breakfast at 8 a.m. And then for myself, I have class. My latest class, I think, ends around like 12:20, 12:30. And then on days you have lift, you lift at 1. So you're there till 2. And then at 2:30, you have your special teams meeting. And from the special teams meeting, you go into practice. So you really are busy from 8 to 6. And then after practice, if you have homework, you still got to take care of that. And I mean, after that, you got to go to bed and get ready for the next day.
Okay, so
so
would you
yeah,
guys
so
argue in favor or against that kind of afternoon schedule? I
Uh,
feel like it sounds like you're probably a little more busy. Like I feel like from our experience, I remember we had almost empty afternoons. Like once you finish your class or two, you get a lot more time off. But it sounds like the afternoon for you guys is just packed.
yeah. I mean, I guess there's pros and cons. Like for me, with like the grad program I'm doing, I wouldn't be able to do it if we won an afternoon practice team. But at the same time, like my days are probably slightly longer than they were. We practice in the morning and I was an undergrad student, but I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like the days are longer, but you're also on like a schedule where I feel like I take care of more stuff throughout the day and I'm not just sitting in my bed for like an hour staring at the TV and not doing anything with my life.
so you guys both kind of obviously Indiana went through a complete rebuild with coaching staff from strength staff, everyone there, kind of all the support staff is all new. Obviously, there's not too much a special teams coordinator can fully change. Special teams is special teams, kind of universal around the country. But we have seen kind of a big investment put on with by kind of fans, NIL collectives, kind of a new culture around that's been built around Signetti. So tell us a little bit about that kind of transition. What's the biggest kind of change you guys seen?
I don't know if there's a big change in special teams. Like you said, it's pretty universal.
The two of you have been around the program for a while. We've got a kind of whole new coaching staff, kind of new culture around the building. Kind of what's the biggest thing you've two seen from like this new coaching staff?
Yeah, I'd just say practice wise, I think our practices got cut down to shorter where we just get out there, take care of business quickly, do what we need to do, what Coach Sig wants to implement for that week. And we get out the practice field pretty fast. We're not out there trying to run like 20 extra plays. He has a set amount of plays that we run, a set amount of special team plays like field goal. I don't kick as many field goals as I did last year. I get out there, I kick a couple field goals. If he likes it, he blows the whistle. We move on to the next period. If he doesn't, he might make me kick another field goal, but that is yet to happen. So I'm not sure what would happen then.
All right, kind of continuing off of that one. So obviously you guys have been around the program for a while. From an investment standpoint, fans have seen, a lot of investment from boosters and facilities is one of those big things. So it's kind of easy because all the facilities are kind of in a circle here. So let's go around the stadium and just talk about some of the improvements that have, been put into this program in, the past couple months since this coaching staff's been around.
I guess the big one's probably being the weight room, new floors, new equipment. I guess I can't really speak to like how much was invested there, but pretty like significant large scale changes. And outside of that, I think the biggest investment's probably been in nutrition, honestly, like as far as like supplements, accessibility to food, um, like a stark contrast as far as like from when I first got to IU, like what was offered to us versus now. Like I genuinely believe I could go throughout the week not paying for a meal if I wanted
Yeah,
to. So that's
for
kind of
sure.
huge. And I guess, like the guys that have like significant body comp goals, like it's pretty helpful.
Yeah, I felt like definitely, when I was there, and obviously Jimmy, you were around for most of that, Nico for a year, but I always feel like that was like an area where we kind of lacked was just access to the resources that most other programs have. And I feel like that's, kind of one of those things that make it sound like, oh, like we need this, we need that. But in all reality, the schedule that you're put on as, a Power Five football player and, the lifting program and everything, if you're not supplementing that the right way with the right nutrition, it kind of does nothing. And I felt like, we saw that investment grow over time, but I feel like where you guys are at now with, I can't remember the name of the company they brought in to do all of it, but it seems like that's going to be a huge deal going forward.
Yeah, I think also just like simple stuff like the past staff had like the collagen out in front of the weight room where it was like optional to take. And this staff is like kind of like this is what you have to take. It's going to take care of your body. So I think stuff like that is important.
Glad to hear those improvements kind of happening around the stadium, especially for the day in the life of the Hoosier athletes. But you guys are coming off a big win over in Pasadena, beat UCLA. Tell us a little about the travel process, what it looked like to acclimate quickly to the West Coast. How is it different than like your normal away game?
I guess we traveled pretty late. I think what we left at 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock, Friday. Got in pretty late, and it was pretty much just eat dinner and go to bed. We were pretty fortunate as far as like in the morning they gave us a lot of time. So I think we had like our first meal, like mandatory meal at like 11 a.m. Eastern time, something like that. So guys had time to sleep. Um, but I think that was huge as far as like getting the rest after that flight because that flight was brutal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
kind
sure.
of talking about that flight, Jimmy. How many years have you been in Indiana?
4.
Okay, so to all of our listeners, we found out before we started this podcast, it took Jimmy 4 years to figure out there's Wi-Fi on the airplane.
I mean, yeah, no one explicitly told me to be fair, but yeah, that made the 5 hour plane trip a whole lot more bearable. So that was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of going off that, Nico, you can take this one. As a kicker, especially, like your legs your biggest asset, and flying a distance like that is obviously one of those things that you probably tighten up a lot. So kind of what was your travel process like, and what did your routine look like going into game day?
Yeah, I was lucky enough for to be in an aisle seat, so that was awesome. Got to stretch out my right leg in the aisle, so that was fine. But there's one thing that they did implement this year. I think they're called fireflies or something like that. You put it right under your knee, and I forgot what Kyle said, who's like our main doc, and he said like it's like 10 times better than the Normatec boots. And I had that on for like 2 hours during the flight on the way there. And then when we got to the hotel, I had them on for a couple hours as well. And then sleep, obviously, as soon as I got to the hotel and Jimmy and I ate, we went up to the hotel room and we texted Jake and we were like, hey, we're going to bed right now. We're not even going to be up for bed check. So just getting the sleep and the fireflies, I think I woke up and my legs felt great. And I knew it was going to be a good day kicking wise.
Do you guys think there's kind of a big difference? So like we had a few fans ask like traveling to UCLA, traveling that 5 hour flight with that time change compared to just like going over to let's say any other Big Ten school, like flying to Penn State, where it's like more of a like 2 hour flight and no time change.
I definitely felt, I guess, the body, off that flight, the 3 hours of extra flight time definitely made a difference. growing up, I guess we're fortunate to only do it once. Like, I couldn't imagine playing like basketball or something and having to make that trip multiple times a year. Like that would suck. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that I don't know if people really factored that in when they thought about, these new teams entering the Big Ten. But if you play a sport where you're playing, multiple away games out west, like take baseball, for instance, I feel like that's got to be pretty taxing on your body. And I feel like especially, football guys, like if you're an O lineman, D lineman getting beat up for 4 quarters and then sitting on a plane afterwards, like this morning had to be brutal.
Yeah, I definitely felt it this morning worse than any other game, groin wise and legs. But it's a part of the game. You got to do it. Got rehab already, so move on.
All right, so moving forward into our final segment. This is going to be our Boomer Doom segment. We're going to do Big Ten stadiums this week. This is presented by Pizza X. So following the podcast, Pizza X is going to sign both of you guys to an NIL deal. Bring you in, film some content, couple free pizzas, gift cards in there for you. But so essentially, we're going to ask, go through the stadiums you guys have played, answer Boom or Doom, whether you like it or not. And, if you have any cool stories about playing there, things that, you thought were good or bad, you're more than welcome to talk about those. Rick, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so obviously this past weekend, let's start with the Rose Bowl.
That
It's a
gets a
boom.
big boom. That was
Big boom.
that was probably the nicest grass I've ever stepped foot on. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree.
Glad to
Yeah.
hear. The next one up, we have Penn State's Beaver Stadium.
Definitely gets a big boom.
Definitely the loudest stadium I've been in up to this point.
And talking about Penn State, let's talk about the white goalposts at Penn State.
Definitely wouldn't help during a whiteout. I'd tell you that much.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'd say that's got to be a Doom. That's one of those places that there's no way it's easy to kick.
Yeah, not a chance. Definitely big fat doom.
How about Illinois' Memorial Stadium?
That gets a doom. That place is so windy. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'll give it a doom as well. The chicken nugget chant is not that cool.
Oh yeah, Jesus Christ. When we were lining up for pregame field goals and the whole stadium started going Nuggets, Nuggets, it was like, holy.
Didn't know that was a chant they had. But
Yeah,
Jimmy,
sorry.
your first game was in Kinnick, Iowa. So let's Boomer Doom that stadium.
That definitely gets a boom. That was a cool place to play your first game for sure.
Let's tell the first punt of your career story, James. I think it might have killed someone in the third row.
No, I think that was in the first one. I think the first one was like a inside 20 punt. So it was like I don't think I hit it very well, but it was like mundane, like down the ball inside the 20. It is what it is. But yeah, I think I know what you're referring to. It was like a crossfield, walk right, kick lift, and over end kicked. And we'd only repped it from the like right hash, right middle. And then we called it off the left hash. And I think I dropped a little inside, and sure enough, so it is what it is. But yeah, that wasn't the greatest thing to do in your first game. So
happens to the best of us. But let's go over to Maryland, Secu Stadium.
I give it a doom. I honestly did not like it at all. I mean, one side is just a bunch of boxes, and then there's student sections like just there, and then a big stadium on the other side. I did not like it.
How about the Big House, Michigan Stadium?
It's a boom.
That's a boom, yeah. It's not. I feel like that's not very loud for how big it is.
Big it is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Memorial Stadium, Nebraska.
That gets a boom. That was, I guess, my sophomore year we played at night there, and that was a pretty cool experience. So,
Ohio State Stadium.
Probably gets a boom. I just remember it being so cold when we played there, but I mean, and we got blown out. But yeah, it was a pretty big stadium, so we'll give it a boom.
But She Stadium at Rutgers.
That gets the biggest doom of them all. That, oh my God, that tunnel walk, like genuinely like 5-minute walk from the field into the locker room. So I don't know if
How
the
about
Big Ten can do something about it, but like, yeah, that made for a pretty terrible experience.
it's no good. How about Spartan Stadium at Michigan State?
Mm, I feel like that also gets a doom. I guess we played there later this year, but when we played there last time, it was like the coldest 7 hours of my life. The field was like rock hard. Uh, didn't make for the most pleasant experience for the specialists. So yeah,
That's fair. Ross Aid at Purdue University.
that probably gets a bigger doom than Rutgers. That was the I guess the away team's locker room was abysmal. It was tiny. Every time I guess when we play there, it's rivalry week, so like their field is always it's like rock hard, grass, hard to plant. Like it makes our lives a little bit, harder. But I guess Nicholas, you can add to that.
Yeah, I mean, that field is terrible. I remember last year getting onto it. First of all, it's freezing. And then you look down at the grass and it's mud painted, and like you don't know where to step, and it's like sand painted in sand, and it's absolutely terrible. Biggest doom ever. Biggest doom in the country.
All right. I want to thank you guys for coming on. Thank you to Pizza X for sponsoring our Boomer Doom section. So last question here before we wrap it up. Going into next week, I know it's Charlotte, we're expecting to win, but out of the two, you guys what are you expecting out of yourselves going forward?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully a bunch of extra points. I mean, I think I have 17 extra points in the past 2 games. If a field goal comes up, I'd love it. But, I think it's going to be a great game for us. And hopefully another 10 extra points for myself.
I guess for me, I guess on the flip side, I haven't really had many opportunities to punt this season, which is a new phenomenon for me. So staying locked in on my process, and I guess taking advantage of every opportunity I get, no matter if it's one time a game or 8. So, yeah, just sticking to my process and what's worked for me in the past, and yeah.
And Jimmy, does that affect you at all? I know I think you've had 1 punt in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
But going out there, obviously your job is to punt. You want to put it on film. We would love, obviously, as Indiana fans and as you guys players, not to have to punt. That's always a good thing. But how does it affect you kind of with those?
I guess I mean, if you get 1 punt a game, it's pretty hard to get in a rhythm. It's funny because I find the games that we don't punt that much, I'm a lot more sore the next day because you're having to stay warm like the whole game without actually getting out there. So if we were to go 3 and out, like my body actually feels better than if we, keep converting on 3rd downs. I'm staying warm for like, and so it's starting to like kind of get on my nerves that like every man and his dog's coming up to me and like chirping me like, "Wow, your body must feel great because we didn't punt." And I'm like, I feel like I was trying to stay warm for like 6 hours, like, so like, yeah. So it's definitely a new process and something I have to, adapt to if, it is to be like this the rest of the season. But yeah, just hopefully, doing what I do. So
Hashtag free Jimmy.
yeah.
All right, I just want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been, a great podcast. Thank you to all our listeners as well. Going forward into Charlotte week, we'll have our Charlotte preview coming out Thursday night. Hopefully another win for the Hoosiers, 4-0, and hopefully, crack into that top 25.
Yeah, thanks to the two of you.
Oh, of course.
Appreciate you guys.